Well, it is official, folks. Seiya Suzuki, the slugger from Japan, is going to be a MLB free agent. On today's episode of Locked On Mets, I'm going to talk about why he is the perfect fit to replace Michael Conforto out in right field.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're listening to Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen every day. Locked On Mets is free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. Now, on today's show, we're going to talk about Japanese slugger Seiya Suzuki, who is going to be posted for bid today. He will be an MLB free agent, and all these teams are interested because this guy can be a legitimate impact player. In the first segment, I'm going to go through his career and his achievements up to this point, why teams are salivating about his potential. In the second segment, I'll talk about his market, how much money he's expected to make, which teams are interested, and how this system works when it comes to signing an international free agent. Then in the last segment, I'll give you my verdict. Should the Mets be all in on Seiya Suzuki to replace Michael Conforto out in right field? Before we get to any of that, though, I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. If you want to find any of my work, follow me on Twitter at FinkelsteinRyan. You can also find some of my writing about the Mets at justbaseball.com. So Seiya Suzuki became a star in the 2016 season when he was 21 years old. His first full year was 2015, put up decent numbers, but 2016 was his coming out party. He hit 335 with a 404 on base percentage and a 612 slugging percentage, 29 home runs, 8 triples, 26 doubles, 95 RBIs, 16 stolen bases, won his first of 4 Golden Gloves, won the Best 9 award, which award they have awarding the best player at each position. He won that award 4 times, probably wins at a 5th one. I don't even know if they have given out those awards for this season, but looking at his numbers, I don't know why he wouldn't have won it this year, which was one of his 5 All-Star seasons. This is a guy that's hit 25 or more home runs in each of his last 6 years. He is a legitimate power threat who just hit 38 home runs this past season, led the league in WAR at 8.4, had a season where he hit 317, 433 on base percentage, 639 slugging percentage. Just ridiculous. Look at his career numbers, a 315 hitter, 414 on base percentage, 570 slugging percentage, 182 home runs, 182 doubles. You are looking at a player who is in his prime at 27 years old. This is not Shogo Akiyama, who signed with the Reds for his age 32 season. This is a younger player who can really have a massive impact next season. There's always that learning curve, and that's something that you're concerned with because you just don't know. You have no idea how he's going to translate. No one knows. We can look at all the film we want of the MPB. There is no clear indication how each respective individual will translate. And because think about it, this isn't just about can he hit major league pitching. He's got to live in the States in a completely foreign country to him. There's so many different elements that come to performing for a given team at a given time. All these different elements come into play. So he's an unknown. But what we do know is we look at the numbers that he's put forth up to this point, and then you look at his tools. And they say a 5-tool player. One of the comps that I've read is AJ Pollock. He wants to be Mike Trout. He admires Mike Trout. And I'm not saying he's going to be Mike Trout, but you can tell by the way he has formulated his game that he pays attention to what's going on in Major League Baseball, or maybe that is just how they're playing baseball everywhere. But there's a clear launch angle to his swing where he's trying to drive home runs, and clearly putting up 38 this year, that is working out for him. You look at his swing, and it's very simple. It's a swing that I believe will translate to any game because there's not a ton of moving parts. He's got a simple leg kick, or leg lift, I should say, but it's not too pronounced. It's more about timing than anything. It doesn't really alter his swing. His body's in control as he goes into that leg lift. A little bit more pronounced than Hideki Matsui, but kind of similar in the timing aspect of their leg kick or leg lifts, I should say. I was just looking at the highlights. Very similar. Matsui sort of had to pull off the ball a little bit more to generate his power, whereas Suzuki is a little more packed with raw power, it seems. He's got really strong hands, a really quick path to the ball. It just seems like a swing that, in my opinion, just looking at some highlights of course, home runs. So it's when his swing was at its best, but it just looks like a swing that's going to translate really well. You're talking about a player that's 5'11, 215 pounds. This is not like Ichiro Suzuki, where he talked about not wanting to weight train throughout his career because he felt like it ruined the natural body mechanics that you have as a player. Whereas Seiya Suzuki is, I don't want to call him a musclehead, but he's jacked for his size and everything. He certainly gets in the gym. He's an elite athlete that should be able to translate very well into Major League Baseball, especially again at his age. The other thing is he has a cannon of an arm. He was a pitcher early on in his career, became a hitter as he got into the professional leagues, but he used to touch 92. He still brings that arm out to right field. That should play very well. He's got this speed and athleticism to play center field if he really had to, but right field seems to be the perfect home for him with that arm. And that's what the Mets need, right? They need someone that can replace Michael Conforto. And defensively, there's a pretty good chance that he would be an upgrade over Michael Conforto out there. So there is a lot to like here. The question is, how much is he going to get? How many teams are interested? And can the Mets be the team that sways him to sign and start a big league career? That is the questions that are left to be answered. But I'm going to talk about some of them in the next segment as we detail what his market could be, how much money he could make, and how this process will play out as he's supposed to be posted on Monday morning. Does this sound familiar? You've got one device that lets you catch the game live, another lets you stream your favorite shows, you're watching your sports highlights on your phone, and you've got your neighbor's best friend's login for the other good stuff you're missing? Well, I want to tell you about a simple way to get all that entertainment you love without the hassle and a great way to finally get your TV together. It's called DirecTV Stream, and it brings your live TV and on-demand favorites together like never before. So you can watch your favorite sports, movies, and shows all in one place. That means no more juggling remotes, no need to buy another device ever again. And the best part, there's no annual contract. So get rid of the clutter and the confusion. Get your TV together with DirecTV Stream. You can learn more at directv.com. That's directv.com. Compatible device required. Content varies by package. All right, so before we talk about which teams are interested in Suzuki, what's the contract going to look like, let's just talk about how this posting system works nowadays. Back in the past, it was very confusing to try to understand how you could even sign a free agent from Japan. All the teams could submit bids, the winning bid would then negotiate with the player. It was a guessing game, it was confusing. Now it's simple. So let's just focus on the current rules. Right now, when it comes to signing a player in the international market, what ends up happening here is the player is a free agent. All 30 teams can negotiate with the player. And then after a contract is signed, the club that he comes from is compensated. So basically, what will happen here, he'll sign a contract, and the Carp would be in line to receive around 20% of the first $25 million he would make. Then if he gets a contract that exceeds that 25 million, that number goes down to 17.5% of that next portion between 25 to 50 million. And then lastly, if he gets a contract that exceeds $50 million, they only get 15% of anything that exceeds that number. So that compensation happens later. But the bottom line is he is a free agent, just like any other free agent outfielder on the market. Any team can sign Seiya Suzuki. He'll be posted on Monday morning. Teams have until December 22nd to come to terms on a deal. Here's where things get interesting. Because the league is entering an expiring CBA and we could see a shutdown as soon as we get to December, that would also shut down his window to sign, but that would pick up again once the league signed a new CBA. So he'd still have that same time period. He would just have to wait until that new CBA was signed, and then he would once again be able to explore his free agency. There would probably be a pretty strong desire, I would think, to get a deal done before the CBA expires. So he's not waiting, because if he's waiting, there might be that ultimate reluctance to continue to see how this process is going to play out. He can just return, play another season in Japan, and test the waters again next year. So that is all the different layers that are going into this. I think this is a market that could move very quickly, especially because of all the interest. Right now, the free agent position player we've seen who seems to have the most interest on the market is Starling Marte. And that to me indicates the lack of legitimate starting level outfielders that are on the market. You have Marte, who is the only real all around proven commodity. You have Nick Castellanos, great hitter, but as I've talked about many times on this show, not a good defender. You have Michael Conforto coming off a down year. This is another player who will be a starting outfielder for any team that signs him next season. And that is something that's very attractive. So there's going to be a ton of teams trying to set up a meeting, figuring out if they can sign Seiya Suzuki. We've already heard the Mariners, we've heard the Giants, we have heard the Mets, obviously. I saw something about the Marlins, I saw the Braves, I've seen the Cubs. I've seen so many different teams, and you wonder how many teams are interested or how many blog sites are pushing out content wanting to make this a reality. But at the end of the day, it's going to come down to the money and the fit. And the Mets have a perfect runway for him to be their starting right fielder, and they have Steve Cohen to win this bidding process. They also have Billy Eppler, who is familiar with wooing a Japanese free agent, as he was the one who signed Shohei Ohtani, who just won an MVP. So there are a lot of things that are lining up in the Mets' favor here if they decide this is a player they want to go all in on. And right now, the reports are that he should be receiving a contract anywhere between $7 and $10 million a year over 3 to 5 seasons. Now, the question is, does he want a shorter deal where he can retest the market again after proving himself and maybe get a much bigger contract? Does he want more guaranteed years now and with that 5-year deal? Also, how accurate is that reporting? Shogo Akiyama signed a 3-year, $21 million deal a couple of years ago. Are they just setting that as the baseline when it comes to the industry sources that are saying $7 to $10 million? But then as all these teams start bidding, that number climbs and climbs. Could he end up getting $15 to $20 million a year? We really don't know. It just depends on what the market is, how good his agent is, what he wants. I mean, there is so many different things that play into this. But if that reporting is accurate, and you're talking about potentially a 5-year, $50 million contract to get an impact player that has the ceiling of being a superstar. That's the ceiling. Will he reach that ceiling? Who knows? But his floor should at least be a good defensive right fielder with some pop. I'd pay $10 million a year for that. So to me, it seems like the perfect fit. And I'm going to talk about why a little bit more in just a minute. I love Thanksgiving. All the good food and treats, and dessert is always the best part of any feast. But maybe this year you want a dessert that's just not so full of calories and sugar, which is why it's the perfect time for Built Bars. Built Bar is the new holiday dessert. Feast on something delicious and feel good about it. One slice of pie has upwards of 300 calories, and that's on the low end, whereas most Built Bars are only 130 calories and only have 4 grams of sugar, but they come packed with plenty of protein. Replace that coconut cream pie with a coconut Built Bar, or go for a raspberry Built Bar instead of that raspberry pie. There are a lot of good flavors to replace any pie. Built Bars all come low in calories, low in carbs, low in fat, but are high in protein and come covered in 100% chocolate. There's going to be new surprises all month with limited time flavors arriving at built.com. So check the site often. There's nothing like a Built Bar Black Friday. So mark your calendar because that would be a huge event with all sorts of surprises. Go to built.com and use the promo code LOCK15. You'll get 15% off your next order. Again, that's promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at built.com. All right, so let's get into it. Should the Mets be all in on Seiya Suzuki? Absolutely. They should be all in on Seiya Suzuki. Now, Starling Marte is still the free agent outfielder I want the most this year. But as I said before, he's generating a ton of interest right now. It's going to cost a premium. You're talking about a player in Marte who is going to be 34. This is a player in Suzuki that's 27. So the upside is clearly better with this signing. Now, the floor is an unknown. We think he has a high floor, but we really don't know. And so that is a big question mark for this Mets team. And to play devil's advocate for myself here, I would say you can't run the risk of signing Suzuki when you already have a team full of question marks. You don't know if Brandon Nimmo is going to stay healthy. Can Dominic Smith really be your left fielder after the season he just had? Where's Jeff McNeil going to play? Is he going to be in the outfield? What are you going to do with Javi Baez? Are you re-signing him? And there's all of these questions that Suzuki would come in and maybe answer a little bit. Yeah, okay, so he's your right fielder. But what happens if he's hitting 180 and he's striking out 35% of the time in the first month of the season? And you didn't do anything else to adjust your outfield. Now what do you do? Then again, he could also hit 10 home runs the first month of the season, prove to be a gold glove caliber right fielder, and completely change the dynamics of your ball club. When it comes to risk and reward, when you have Steve Cohen's pocketbook, this is a relatively low risk. He is going to come a lot cheaper than Starling Marte, than maybe even a Michael Conforto would, Nick Castellanos, all these other free agents. And he's going to give you potential that few else could. So I look at that. I consider where the Mets are and what their needs are. And if you were to sign Suzuki to a 5-year, $50 million contract right now, well, that's only $10 million on your payroll for next season. You could still go out and sign Javi Baez. You could still go out and sign Starling Marte too if you really wanted to. Ain't nothing wrong with 3 good outfielders. Isn't that what you're supposed to have? You could do that as well. I mean, there is a lot of different ways the Mets can attack this offseason. And a $10 million contract for next season does not get in the way of anything, especially when you're already planning on being a luxury tax team with a payroll that could climb over $250 million. So, with that in mind, yes, they should be all in here because he is the type of player that can pop and change the fortunes of your ball club. This is not Shohei Ohtani, but Billy Eppler was the guy that got Shohei Ohtani. And Shohei Ohtani was can't miss. But Billy Eppler has been in those rooms before, and he can sell that to Suzuki's representatives. Look how well I set up Shohei Ohtani to enjoy a great big league career. He can talk about the adjustment period. I talked about the mental side of this. There's so much more that goes into coming to the States than just hitting a baseball. You got to live life over here in a foreign country. Billy Eppler has the experience of what you can do to make a player comfortable. And that's going to go a long way, especially if he's negotiating with other teams that have no idea how to make a player comfortable coming from Japan. So that's one benefit the Mets have. When it comes to structuring out a contract, I almost would like the Mets to sign Suzuki to a 3-year deal, even if you got to pay a little bit more when it comes to average annual value because you're not tied to him for 5 seasons. Then again, maybe it is wise to sign to a 5-year deal because if he's great, he might outperform that contract significantly. There's still risk though. So maybe he could also want the shorter deal because maybe he wants to bet on himself. If that's the case, when it comes to the short deal, I know they said the market is 3 to 10. I say 3 for 36. If you put that contract in front of him tomorrow, getting $12 million a year, and they're expecting to get 10, and then Billy Eppler sells the vision of what Suzuki is going to mean for the New York Mets, how they're going to make them comfortable, and all those different things that come into play here, the Mets can absolutely win this bidding process early and just get him locked up. I want to see the Mets be as aggressive as possible to build out their ball club before that CBA expires. Because the one thing that we have to think about, while the CBA is going to be the focal point during that shutdown period, and there's going to be a lot of negotiations going on, your front office doesn't have to completely stop working. You can still be thinking about how to build out your ball club. And if you have some of these players locked into place, well, that just gets you ahead of the game on some of the other pieces that can complement the roster that you have. So when you're looking at a free agent in Suzuki, where his market can develop really fast, he has a really high ceiling, and he's not going to cost an exorbitant amount compared to the other free agents on the market. This is a gamble the Mets should be all in on because he could pay out in a massive way and completely change the fortunes of the Mets season in 2022. We'll see what happens. He's certainly an exciting player to watch, and I'm looking forward to seeing his big league career play out, whether it's with the Mets or anyone else. It's just good for baseball to get more international players performing on the big stage and shining as bright as possible, as we just saw with the AL MVP Shohei Ohtani. Anyway, that's going to be all for today's episode of Locked On Mets. As always, thank you for listening. Make sure you follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcast. Make sure you follow me on Twitter at Finkelstein Ryan. Follow the show at Locked On Mets. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen every day. Now for your second listen, check out Locked On Bets, hosted by your boy Q and handicapping expert Lee Sterling. It is your daily one-stop shop for all your gambling needs. You can find Locked On Bets wherever you get podcasts.